Welcome back. So today we're flying out in the JF-17, and this might be a little bit of an amusing video for some of you who figure out what went wrong early on. Keep an eye out for that. I'm really putting this video up because I wanted to make a video about the JF-17 and talk about it, because I really like it as a plane. But at the same time, I made a big oopsie when I was flying out in this plane, and I wonder if you guys catch it and figure out what it was early on. I'll tell you later, but if I had just paid more attention early on, we would not have had this oopsie. So let's get into it. We were flying out on the Gray Flag Persian Gulf server, and you might have seen right there, we just about rolled over into the ground. So there's your first hit. But anyway, we got up into the air, wheels up, all good. And so we were flying out of Blar. We had done a couple strikes at this point, and I was rearming, refueling, and getting ready to go back up towards the area near Shiraz. We were at least headed in that direction. And I was hitting one of the either supply bases or QRFs. So I'm probably not going to do a whole lot of talking in this video, but keep an eye out and let me know if you figure out what the issue was. So, as an aside, for those of you who don't know a whole lot about the JF-17, the JF-17 is an awesome little plane. It's an export plane built by the Chinese and flown by the Pakistanis. It's essentially a light fighter competitor to the F-16 in like the market for relatively inexpensive planes to build and operate that fill the light multi-role. So its capacity is a little bit less than an F-16 in my opinion. I think you can carry a little bit more with an F-16. That's like just in sheer volume of ordnance. As far as types of ordnance and types of weapons, it basically has the same capabilities as a NATO plane. You have your glide bombs, and actually it has access to some ginormous glide bombs. They're basically like 500 kilo JSOWs, and I adore them. They're basically the best thing that's come out of East Asia since gunpowder. In addition to that, it can carry your air-to-air infrared missiles, your air-to-air Fox 3 missiles. It can carry dumb bombs, rocket pods. It can carry your JDEM equivalents, which is what I have on this time around. It can carry laser-guided bombs. It can carry the Chinese equivalent to HARMS. It has the Gish-23 as its cannon, so if you've ever flown a MiG-21 or any of the older Soviet planes, then you're probably familiar with it. It's just in a much more up-to-date glass cockpit. It's got all of the various flight assists that you might want. All in all, it's a pretty awesome plane. The only real downside to the JF-17 is its pylon setup and its fuel capacity. I don't know exactly what its fuel capacity is, but it feels less than the F-16. In addition to that, unlike the F-16, you have to use up a pylon for your targeting pod. Now, from what I've heard, on the more modern versions of the JEF, it has its own dedicated pylon, so you don't have to compromise weapons or fuel for the T-pod. And I really wish that we had something like that in DCS, but it is what it is. It has a DTC system so it's got a cartridge that you have to update whenever you change loadouts on the plane, but that cartridge can also be used to load navigation data, so you can have preset coordinates from map markers and whatnot. The other caveat is that specific coordinate numbers are tied to different functions in the plane. For example, it's one of the few planes in DCS that can carry cruise missiles, similar to the F-18, and there's a set of coordinates that are dedicated to certain types of fire modes for those cruise missiles. I haven't used them in a while, so I couldn't tell you off the top of my head exactly which one's which, but I've got some notes in my kneeboard about it when I do go to use them. So, ideally, if I could change something about the Jeff, I would make that targeting pod change, because right now I've got the targeting pod centerline, I've got 2 bags for fuel, and then I've got the 4 250 kilo JDAMs out on the edge, or out on the outer pylons, and then I've got the IR missiles on the wingtips. If I didn't have to put the targeting pod on the center line, if I had like a cheek position for it, then I would put a fuel tank center line, and then I could carry more bombs, or I could carry harms, or I could carry air-to-air missiles. And I would prefer a setup like that, but it is what it is. In addition to that, I guess the radio can be a little bit finicky when you set it up. You have 2 channels, but the one on the right you usually use to set up your data link. So realistically, you just have the one radio, and you have like a more manual analog setup for the radio on your left panel, like to the left of your thigh. And you can change your presets there, or you can, I guess, run it manually there, but usually I just change the presets. On Gray Flag, the Jeff doesn't have a preset for the universal ATC frequency, so I usually change one of my channels to that. So I'll have like TACCOM, and then I'll have the universal ATC, and I just switch between the two when I'm close to an airfield that I plan on, getting low enough for it to be an issue. Other than that, the WMD pod, which is the targeting pod for it, is fantastic. It zooms in really well, it's really high def, you can basically see everything and more, so I like it a lot. But with that, I'll leave you to it, and enjoy the flight. Alright, so we're finally starting to get close to the target. We're going to flip the lights off. Now, me being the dunce that I am, I forgot which panel they were on. I haven't flown this thing at night in a while. And so we're getting close to the target, figured let's go dark. I probably could have done it right after takeoff, but I was much more concerned with keeping the plane flying straight since, this plane has been a little bit wobbly thanks to our little oopsie. Now, when we crest this hill that we're looking at on the T-pod, we should be able to see some of our targets. Sometimes on Gray Flag, I can't render them until I'm almost above them, which is a little bit annoying, but sometimes it's not an issue. I don't know exactly what causes it, but in my experience, if there's another plane that's already over an area, the area is loaded, and I can see it from much further out, there's nobody over this area, it's just me, so I have to wait for them to pop in and populate. That being said, we're going to pop off our JDAMs. They're not literally called JDAMs, but they are Chinese JDAMs. Now, there are better ways I could have done this, but I thought, hey, I can be quick. Let me just mark one after another and, just mark, drop, mark, drop. To be honest, though, the smart thing to do would have been to program each weapon and then drop them all together. I kind of just thought I would be lazy, and me deciding to be lazy actually made things more difficult for me. Remember, this plane is already kind of wobbly. So, bloop. We have our first weapon away. And bloop. Actually, I think that was our second. And now let's look for more targets. See, I thought that I would be hitting a couple of buildings in that little town area, or that city, I guess, but they didn't show up this time, so I'm not sure if somebody else hit them or what, because I didn't see craters, but we ended up hitting one of the flat buildings, and we ended up, I think, dropping on some of the various ground forces that were down there. And there's our last weapon away. All four away. Now let's enjoy the show and watch them go kaboom. Also, you can see, we are still very wobbly. I'm sure that if you haven't figured it out by now, that the reason will become apparent very soon. And when it does, I can't wait to tell you all about what a colossal fuck up I made. And kaboom! Enemy fuel eliminated. We were wobbling just a bit though when we tried to drop on the other one, and because of that, I'm pretty sure our bomb is going to sail. Got close though. I think it hit like right on the edge. Now it is time for us to skedaddle. We could have turned out earlier and headed home, but I'd already flown one strike up here and nothing shot at me, so I wasn't that concerned. As you can hear though, there is something tracking me, so yeah, I probably should have just skedaddled. One flare for good measure. You never know, right? Now, I'm trying to use my autopilot to help keep the plane stable, because, again, we've been kind of wobbly. I'm also trying to do a little bit of BDA here and see what I did and didn't kill. Figure on the next strike out, we'll come back, we'll clean up some of the ground units, and we'll make sure those last two flat buildings get destroyed. I'd have to bring out pretty specific weapons to take out the bunkers. They're pretty hefty, and to be honest, I don't think we have any at LAR, so the thing with the Jeff is it has pretty short legs, and if I want to take out some of the harder hitting, heavier ordnance, I'm going to have to go back to one of the much further out air bases and fly up, refuel south of LAR, and fly up here, or much more likely for me, land at LAR, refuel, and make the hop up to here. Which I can do, but it's time consuming. I think I'd rather just leave the heavier bunkers to other planes. There's usually lots of F-18s rolling around, and they can take a loadout of 4 bunker busters, or they can take 4 of the slammers. And if they take the slammers, they don't even really have to get that close. I actually have done that quite a few times. I rather enjoy the slammers because you can take direct control of them in their terminal phase. Up. Uh-oh. Yep. You see the problem now? So, if you were wondering what my major oopsie was, when I was on the ground, I thought, hey, Last time out, we got a little bit lower on fuel than I might have liked to. If I needed to stay up and fight somebody, it might have been an issue. Let's throw some fuel tanks on. Well, in all of my wisdom and in all my glory, I went through the list, I clicked on one, was like, alright, there's a fuel tank, clicked on the other one, alright, there's the other fuel tank. What I managed to do was put on 2 different sized fuel tanks, one of them full and one of them empty. Yep, that's right. One is an 1100 liter tank, the other's an 800 liter tank, and one of them had nothing in it. And one of the tanks decided it was going to hang. So that's a minor problem. So I figured, alright, maybe I'm not doing it right. Maybe I just didn't set up the selective jettison right. Let's try the panic jettison. Nope, still there. So now I was a little bit annoyed because I'm gonna have to fly all the way back to base, still unbalanced, with this big old fuel tank hanging off one side that doesn't want to come off. And I'm pretty sure with the Jeff, it does have some speed parameters for dropping fuel tanks off, so I'm not sure if it's right here or if it's a little bit later on, but there was a point where I tried to slow down a little bit to drop it off, because I think it can only drop up to 0.89 Mach or something like that. But nope. With that, we had to fly the rest of the way back to base with the fuel tank hanging on all the way back to LAR. On the plus side, though, we did successfully make it to LAR, we landed, and we hit almost all of our targets. So it goes to show that you should double check what you're reading. You should make sure that you have the right loadouts on board, because otherwise you're gonna have a pain in the ass your whole flight out and back. We're lucky we didn't roll over and crash on takeoff. Once we were in the air, it wasn't too much trouble. Admittedly, I could have flown the plane better, but landing actually wasn't that bad, even though we were a little bit lopsided. I'm surprised I didn't snap one of the landing gear by, I don't know, coming down too hard on either the left or the right side, but it was actually a pretty decent landing, all things considered. So with that, hopefully you learn from my mistakes. Get out there, kick ass, take names, and win your games.